Welcome to this YSL Report Builder tutorial. In this video we'll look at how you can concatenate values to form longer strings of text. We'll start with a look at basic concatenation in both Visual Basic and in SQL, and then look at a technique you can use in Report Builder which allows you to concatenate without creating an expression using something called placeholders. We'll look at how you can deal with nulls when you concatenate values, and then how to concatenate numbers into a string, including how to format those numbers in the final output. The final part of the video looks at concatenating special characters such as tab spaces and new lines, so quite a few things to do here. Let's get started. To get started, I've created a new blank report in Report Builder, and the first thing we'll do in here as usual is create a connection to the YSL Movies database. Just a quick reminder, if you don't already have that installed, you can follow along with this video which explains exactly how to get it set up, and there's a link in that video's description so that you can download any required files. I'll assume you've done that part already then, and head back to the Data Sources folder in the Report Data window. I'll right click it and choose to add a data source. And I'll call the data source Movies as usual, choose to use an embedded connection, set the connection type to Microsoft SQL Server, and then click the build button to get a bit of help constructing the connection string. I'll type in a shortcut to the local host // and then the name of the instance of SQL Server I want to connect to, SQL 2017. Having done that, I can select my Movies database from the drop-down list towards the end of the dialog box. Click OK a couple of times, and there's my data source created. Now that I've done that, I can right click on the data source and choose Add Dataset, and I'll call this dataset Movie Roles. I'll hit the Query Designer button at the bottom of the dialog box to get a bit of help constructing the select statement, and I'd like to select columns from three different tables. First of all, from the actor table, I want the first name, family name, and full name columns. Then from the film table, I'd like to get the title column. And then finally from the role table, I'd like to get the role column. If I then click OK and click OK again, that's my data set created. Next, I'd just like to quickly display some of these columns in a new table in the report. I'll start by tidying up and deleting the title text box. Then I can remove my page footer as well. I'll right click somewhere in the report body and choose to insert a new table. And I'd like to assign the full name of the actor, the role of the film, the role of the character they played, and then the title of the film in which they played that role. Just to avoid the font display bug, sometimes when you run the report you don't see all of the text appearing, I'll quickly switch the font of all the cells in the table from the default and then back to the default. And then I'll modify the column widths a little bit, so hopefully we won't spill across multiple lines. Highlight the column headers and do a quick bit of basic formatting. And then a quick run of the report, just to check that we get something relatively sensible looking. So now that we've got the basic report set up, I'd like to start joining some of these bits of text together to form longer bits of text. So let's head back to the design view and look at how we can do that. The first example we'll create is going to join the full name of the actor with the name of the role they played in a particular film. And we'll insert some literal text in between the two, just to form a complete sentence. To do that, let's right click on our movie roles dataset and choose to add a calculated field. And I'll call this one Played By. I can then hit the FX button at the right hand side to launch the expression builder. And the first bit of text I want to reference is the value of the full name field. So I'll head to the fields list and then double click full name. The symbol to concatenate strings in Visual Basic, which is the language we use in Report Builder, is the ampersand symbol. So I'll type in a space followed by an ampersand followed by another space. Now I'd like to join in some literal text, a verbatim phrase exactly as I want it to be displayed in the final string. To enclose literal text in Visual Basic, you use a set of double quotes. So I can open up some double quotes, and then I'm going to type in a space, and then the phrase I want to use, played the role of, followed by another space, and then close the double quotes. The spaces inside the double quotes here are important. Without this leading space in front of the word played will be attached directly to the end of the full name of the actor. So when I say literal text in double quotes, I do mean literally, not figuratively, literally, as most people seem to mean that these days. So yes, these extra spaces at the beginning and the end of the string are important. After the double quotes, I'm going to type in another space followed by an ampersand and a space, and then I can insert the value of the role field. So I can double click the role field. Finally, I can click OK a couple of times, and then I can drag my played by column into my table. I'll drag it to the very end so it attaches itself to the right hand side. Maybe make that column reasonably wide so it can be readable on a single line, or almost. And then if I run the report, we should find a column that tells us the role played by each actor in the film. There's lots of roles played by Tom Cruise, and if we scroll down we'll see that changes as the name of the actor changes as well. So that looks reasonably good and is reasonably straightforward, and we can carry on doing that sort of thing. You're not limited to just joining 2 or 3 things together. You can concatenate as many things as you like. So let's head back to the design view and we'll just expand that a little more. I'm going to right click on the played by field and choose to view its properties. Then I can click the FX button at the right hand side of that. After the role value, I'm going to type in a space and an ampersand and another space. And then in some double quotes, a space in the movie, followed by another space, and then close those double quotes. Another space, an ampersand, and another space. And then finally I can head back to my fields list, double click the title field, the final expression. If I can just change the width of the dialog box there, the final expression looks like so. Having done that, I can click OK a couple of times, have a look at the report if I run it, and we'll see that it's included the extra text that I've added there as well. So the basics of concatenation is pretty straightforward. As with most expressions we can create in Report Builder, we can replicate the technique with a couple of minor differences in the underlying SQL of our select statement. So just to show some basic concatenation and the basic differences in SQL, let's right click the movie roles dataset and choose to view its properties. And then I'm going to add a new blank row above my from clause and then begin a brand new column. And to do this, rather than typing it in, I'm going to start by copying and pasting. I want to start with the actor full name, and I'm going to include the comma there as well. So the symbol for concatenation, the basic operator for concatenation in SQL, isn't an ampersand, it's the plus symbol. We simply add bits of text together. The delimiter, or the character you use to contain literal strings in SQL, of course, isn't a double quote, it's a single quote. So after the plus symbol, I can type in a single quote, and then the phrase I wanted, which was played the role of. I'll make sure to include spaces in front of the word played and after the word of before I close my single quotes, and then another plus symbol, and then I can join or concatenate the value of the role column. Again, I'm just going to quickly copy and paste that to avoid typing mistakes, and I've just misselected that. There should be a square bracket in front of the word role, and then I can type in another plus symbol after that, and then I can enter a new single quote in the movie, and then close the single quotes, again making sure to include a space in front of the phrase and after the phrase, followed by another space and a plus, and then I'm going to copy the film title column name. I'll finish this by adding an alias. I'll call it as played by 2, and then click OK. My new column will be added to my dataset, and then rather than adding it into the table again in an extra column, I'm just going to replace the played by column with the played by 2 column. So I can run the report again, and I'll see exactly the same result as I just saw with the Visual Basic version, but just with a couple of minor differences to construct the expression in SQL. Now, if you didn't want or need a full calculated field to join your text together, there is a slightly easier way to construct sentences in Report Builder. I'm going to replace the played by 2 column with the full name of the actor, which is the beginning of the strings we've concatenated in our 2 columns so far. Now, without creating a calculated field, I can actually just click straight into the text box in which the full name exists. Make sure that I don't have the text selected, so make sure it's not highlighted in blue. Click just after that and I'll see my flashing text cursor appears. And then I can type in any literal text I want just by typing it straight in. So full name, played the role of. If I now just click away from that and run the report, you can see that I've got the actor name and the phrase that I've typed in immediately after it. So now I wanted to add in the role field. So let's head back to the design view. To get this to work, you need to make sure you've got a specific thing selected. If I just try to drag the role field into that text box, you can see hopefully at the right hand side, it gives me the vertical blue line. So I can't drag that and drop it inside the text box. If I release the mouse button, it attaches that column as a new column to the table. So I'm just going to quickly undo that. If I make sure that I've clicked inside the text box, that might require clicking more than once so that I can see the flashing text cursor. I'll type in a space after the word of, and then I can drag the role field into that text box while the text cursor is displayed. So once I've done that, I can run the report, and you can see hopefully that I've added in the name of the character played by the actor. I can head back to the design view and I can carry on in that vein. I can click in the text box and then continue typing more text in the movie. And then again, making sure that the flashing text cursor is visible, I can head back to the title field and then drag that in and drop it at the end of the string. So if I run the report, I end up with exactly the same final result as we had with our two constructed columns, but it's slightly easier to do things that way, I think. And if you don't need the full calculated field, then there's no harm in building your strings like this. Concatenation is such an important technique simply due to the nature of database design. One of the main aims of database design is to record information in small, separate, discrete component parts. So usually, rather than having a full name of an actor, you would only have access to the first name and family name columns, and it would then be up to you to construct the full name by concatenating the values together. So let's just have a quick look at how that works. I'm going to move my existing table down the report a little bit so that I can insert a new table. And in that new table, I'm going to include the first name and the family name of each actor. I'll leave the third column blank for the time being, but I'm going to make sure that I've highlighted all the cells in the table and then changed the font from its default to a different one, and then back to the default. Tiny bit of basic formatting for the column headers again. And then I'd like to create a new calculated field which joins the first name to the family name with a space in between. So I'm going to right click on my movie roles dataset, choose add calculated field. I'll call this one, I've already got one called full name, so I'll call this one actor name. And then if I click the FX button at the right hand side, I can go to my fields list, double click first name, an ampersand with a literal space, and then concatenate that with the family name. The full expression looks like so. Having done that, I can click OK and OK again, and then I can simply assign the actor name field to that third column. And if I now have a quick look at running the results, there we go. So each actor has their first name and family name joined together with a single space sitting in between. Again, of course, we could do the exact same thing in the underlying SQL of the select statement. So let's right click on the movie roles dataset and choose to view its properties. And then we can add a new column. So somewhere above the from clause, I'll type in a couple of spaces. And then again, I'm going to begin this column by typing in a new comma. And then I'm going to copy and paste actor.firstname and then use the plus symbol to add a literal space contained in single quotes, and then another plus symbol followed by the actor family name. Once I've done that, I'll give that an alias. I'll call it as actor name 2, and then click OK. And then I'd like to drag this new column into my table and attach it to the right hand side. So at that point, if I run the report, I'll see both of the two columns contain the exact same values. So the first name joined with a space and with a family name. However, there is a small difference in terms of what happens in Visual Basic and SQL, depending on whether or not there is a value in each of the two columns I'm joining together. If I head back to the design view, I'm going to add a sort to this table. So I'm going to click into a cell in the table and then right click on one of the grey boxes around the outside so that I can select the TableX Properties option. Then I'm going to head over to the sorting page and choose to add a sort, and I'm going to sort by the family name in ascending order, A to Z. If I then click OK and then run the report, we'll see there is a bit of a difference in the two columns I've created. Some of our actors don't have a family name. They've just been entered as the first name, so people like Sting and Cher, etc. In Visual Basic, if I join a phrase, a piece of text to a null or a nothing, I still get the original piece of text, whereas in SQL, if I join a null to anything, then the inevitable result is null. Even though the Visual Basic version works, we've actually also added in an extra space character to the end. It's not easy to see, or it's impossible to see just by looking, but each of these actor names has a literal space sitting after their name. And if we were assuming that there was no literal space after their name, that might cause problems later on if we used the actor name field in another calculation. So I'd like to look at how we can basically create just the first name if the actor does not have a family name, and two slightly different techniques depending on whether we do this in Visual Basic or in SQL. Let's head back to the design view. We'll do this in the Visual Basic version first. So I'm going to right click on the actor name field and choose Field Properties. Then I'm going to click the FX button at the right hand side. And what I'd like to do first off is check if the family name field is nothing, something we've done in previous videos. So we're going to use a combination of some common functions. First of all, from the program flow category, we're going to use the if function. So I'm going to click just after the equals operator in the expression and then double click the if function. Then I can head over to the inspection category and then I can insert the is nothing function by double clicking that. And then I can go to my fields list and insert the family name field. I then need to close one set of round brackets to close the is nothing function, and then I want to type in a comma. And if there is no family name, then all I want to return for the actor's name is the first name. So I can double click the first name field. I can then type in another comma, and if the family name is not nothing, then I want to join the first name with a literal space and the family name. I just then need to make sure that I've closed the parentheses or the round brackets for the if function at the end of the expression. And just to tidy up a little bit, to make things a little more readable, I'm going to take each of my arguments to a separate line so that it's a little easier to see what's going on. So if I zoom in so you can see the full expression, that's what we should end up with. Having done that, I'm going to click OK a couple of times, and although there won't be an obvious difference when we look at the results, you now have the satisfaction of knowing that if there is no family name, your actor name does not have an extra space at the end of it. To do the same thing in SQL is a little different. It's a slightly more elegant solution actually in SQL, or at least I think it's slightly more elegant. If we switch back to the design view and right click the movie roles dataset and choose dataset properties, what we can do is modify this calculation. So just after the comma, I'm going to use a function called isNull. So if I say isNull and then open up some round brackets, the idea in the isNull function is you pass in two values. The first thing you pass in is the value you want to try to return. And then if that thing you're trying to return gives you a null, then you say what value you want to get in place of that. So ideally what I would like to get is the actor name, the first name, joined with a space, joined with a family name. But if I can't have that because it gives me a null, then I simply want to return the first name. So just after where it says actor.familyname, I'm going to type in a comma, and then I'm going to copy and paste the actor first name. I can then close the round brackets at the end of that, leave the alias as it is as actor name 2. I'll just zoom in so you can see that a little more clearly. So is null actor first name plus a space plus a family name, comma, actor first name. If I click OK and then preview the report, we'll see now we end up with a value for every actor, regardless of whether they have a family name or not. So far we've only concatenated text with other text, but there's nothing to stop you combining values of different data types in a single string. Let's create a second data set to use to demonstrate this. I'm going to right click on my movies data source and choose add data set. Now I'm going to call this data set films, and then click the query designer, expand the tables folder and then the film table, and we'll have a variety of columns from here. We'll have the title, the release date, the runtime minutes, the budget dollars and box office dollars, and the Oscar nominations and the Oscar wins. So a combination of text, dates and numeric values. Let's click the OK button a couple of times. I'm going to tidy up my report a little bit. I'm going to get rid of these existing tables completely. I'll select them by dragging a rectangle around part of each of them and then hit the delete key to remove them. Then I'm going to insert a new table. And then I'm going to start selecting fields from my films table. I'm going to go for just the title column and the runtime minutes column to begin with. I'll make sure that I've modified the font so that I don't run into this font rendering bug. So I'll switch from the default font and then back to it. And then a quick bit of basic formatting for the column headers as usual. And a quick run of the report to see what we end up with. And there we are, Jurassic Park 126. So the first phrase I would like to create will be something like Jurassic Park is 126 minutes long. So it's going to join the name of the film with a piece of literal text with the value of the runtime minutes column. Doing this in Visual Basic is really straightforward. There's no difference when you're concatenating strings with numbers or dates. It really doesn't matter. Let's add a calculated field to the films dataset. Then I'm going to right click films and choose add calculated field. And I'm going to call this one minutes long, or something along those lines. Click the FX button, head to the fields list, and then double click the title field. Type in an ampersand, and then I want the word is, surrounded by spaces inside a set of double quotes. And then another ampersand, followed by the runtime minutes field, and another ampersand, and in some double quotes, a space, and the phrase minutes long. Notice that I don't need a space at the end of this string because that represents the end of the sentence. There's no point including an extra space there. There's nothing that will appear afterwards. So just close the double quotes immediately after the word long. We can add punctuation if we like, we could add a full stop or whatever, but I'm going to leave off the punctuation. If I click OK a couple of times, and then I can drag the minutes long field into the last column, the blank column available, run the report, and just as expected, we get the phrase Jurassic Park is 126 minutes long, and the same equivalent function or expression for each of the other films. Trying to take the same approach in SQL is a little more tricky, as you're about to see. Let's right click on our films dataset and choose dataset properties. And then I'd like to add a new column, so I'm going to add a new blank line above my from clause, start with a comma, and then I'd like to try to construct the exact same string. So I'll go for the film title first, plus the phrase is in a set of single quotes, plus the film runtime minutes, plus the phrase minutes long. I'll assign an alias as minutes long 2. And then just so you can see the full expression, essentially the exact same thing we constructed in Visual Basic. The problem is that this isn't going to work. If I click OK and then I add the minutes long to field, or replace minutes long with minutes long to, when I run the report, it fails. An error occurred during local report processing. If I click the details button, it will give me a small clue as to what's going on here. And if I zoom in so you can read the message, conversion failed when converting the varchar value. So varchar is one of the text data types in SQL Server, to the data type small int. Small int is a small whole number, an integer, and that refers to the value of the runtime minutes column. So the problem we've got here is in SQL, we've got two data types involved in the calculation. So we've got some text data and some numeric data. The output has to be one particular type, so it can either be text or it could be a number, not both. So SQL Server has to make a decision about which data type it should try to convert stuff into. Visual Basic does that fairly cleverly. It recognises we're concatenating things, so the output must be some kind of text. But SQL Server doesn't quite work like that. SQL Server operates on a different set of rules, referred to as data type precedence. If I just click OK and then get back to the design view, if I can show you quickly here, there's a web page in the Microsoft Docs website for data type precedence in SQL. And if I look at this list, this is how important each data type in SQL Server is compared to each other data type. So we had a small int for the runtime minutes field, that's down there on row number 17, roughly in the middle of the list. But the varchar text type is even further down the list in row number 27. So because small int is more important than varchar, it takes precedence over varchar, SQL Server will implicitly try to convert any other data types, any varchar values, into a small int. And that makes no sense whatsoever. I can't convert Jurassic Park is into a whole number. So we have to override these data type precedence rules. We need to make sure that we've converted the numeric type into a text type instead. To do that is a little effort. We can use one of two different functions to do that. If I switch back to the films dataset and choose to view its properties, a common function to use to convert data from one type to another is called cast. So just in front of film.runtime minutes, I'm going to type in the word cast and then open up some round brackets. Film.runtime minutes as, and then I want to use the same data type of the other text in this string. So that's varchar. I can then close the round brackets, and then again if I just zoom in so you can see that a little more clearly, that's the full expression. And then having done that, if I click OK and then run the report again, we'll see now that we end up with the same phrase as we had in Visual Basic. Casting data types is a little bit of a fiddly thing to do, particularly if you're constructing a string out of lots of different bits of text and numbers and dates. Each type of information that was not a bit of text has to be converted into text. So there's a slightly simpler solution in SQL. Back to the design view, I'm going to go back to the dataset properties of films, and then rather than adding my bits of text together in this expression, I'm going to use a function that's designed to concatenate strings. So just after the comma at the beginning of that column's definition, I'm going to type in the name concat and then open a set of round brackets. The idea behind concat is that you just write a comma separated list of the things you want to put together. So I'm going to get rid of my cast function and the open round brackets, and then the as varchar and the closed round brackets. And I'm basically now just replacing all the plus symbols with commas instead. I just need to make sure that I've closed the round brackets at the end of that list of things just before my alias. So here the idea with concat is it's going to take each individual value I've entered, separated by commas, and put them all together into one single continuous string. And as the concat function is designed to produce a string, it will implicitly convert any numeric or date or other data types into a string before it generates the final result. If I zoom back out and then click OK and then run the report again, I'll end up with the exact same answer, but a little bit easier to do using concat versus using cast to modify your data types. For the next example, I'd like to work with some slightly larger numbers. So we're going to look at the box office dollars column. I'll add that one into the table first, and then I'll get rid of the runtime and minutes long columns. And then a quick look at the results of that report if I run it. What I would like to do is construct a phrase which says something like Jurassic Park made this obscene amount of money at the box office, so 1,029,939,903. But I want to make that a lot more readable because it's really awkward at this point to make out what that number is. So back into the design view, let's construct the basic concatenation first. I'll right click on my films dataset and choose Add Calculated Field. And I'll call this field Money Made. And then I'll click the FX button at the right hand side. Start by referencing the title column. Concatenate that with the text made in some double quotes with spaces either side. Concatenate that with the box office dollars field. And then concatenate that with the phrase at the box office. Okay, so if I click OK a couple of times and then drag the money made field into the table, change the width of the column and then run the report. Again, the number itself is kind of unreadable at this point, but I can see that, that I've constructed the overall phrase, so that part's working. Formatting numbers when you're concatenating them into a string requires a bit of effort. We need to apply a function to format these numbers. And we have a few choices. If I head back to the design view, one quick simple choice won't give us quite the results we want, but if I right click my money made column and choose field properties, click the FX button and then click just before the box office dollars reference in that expression. I can go to the Common Functions category and choose Text. And you'll see that in the text category there's a group of functions designed for formatting various types of values. So formatting things as percentages, formatting general numbers, dates and times, and then the encouraging sounding one here, format currency. If I double click format currency, it inserts the name of the function and opens some round brackets just in front of the reference to box office dollars. There's a second parameter which allows you to state how many decimal places you want. So after the reference to box office dollars.value, I can type in a comma, followed by a 0, and then close the round brackets. If I then click OK and OK again, I can then run the report, and I'll see that it has applied some formatting, but sadly not quite the formatting I wanted. It's formatted according to my regional settings. I'm in the United Kingdom, so I've got pounds sterling, which isn't quite right because I've quoted the box office values in US dollars. In order to get a slightly more elaborate or a custom currency format, I can't use the format currency function. I need to use the more generic format function. And in order to use the format function, we need to know how to construct custom format codes. Now there's a couple of options for doing that. You can either learn how to write custom format codes, which is a bit tedious because they're not particularly elegant or intuitive. Alternatively, you can cheat, and that's what we're going to do. If you don't want to think of it as cheating, think of it as being efficient. We shall be efficient. So I'm going to start by formatting the box office dollars field. I'm going to head back to the design view and then right click the box office dollars cell in the table and choose text box properties. Now there's a really convenient way. If I select the number page and then choose currency, there's an incredibly convenient way to specify exactly how I would like my currencies to be displayed. I'm going to stick with 2 decimal places. I want to use a thousand separator so I get commas separating groups of 3 digits. And I don't want to show the values as a total, the raw underlying number. I want to scale those numbers down, not just to thousands, but to millions. So the numbers are a lot easier to read. And again, I don't want to use the United Kingdom pound sterling symbol. I'm going to click on that drop down list, scroll upwards to dollars English United States. So, having done all of that, if I have a quick look at the results at this point and click OK, and then run the report, you can see that that number is a lot easier to read. It would be nice if we had a symbol indicating that it was scaled to millions. I'd like to include the letter M at the end of the number. So if I head back to the design view, I'm going to go back to the exact same dialog box, right-click Box Office Dollars, choose Text Box Properties, choose Number, and then there's no simple way to add an M on this page. So what I'm going to do instead is click on the Custom option at the bottom of that list, and that will show me the formatting code that Reporting Services or Report Builder has generated for me just by filling in options on the currency page of that dialog box. To add the letter M, we can just type that in after the decimal places. Just to explain what this is doing, I'm not going to explain the whole thing because it's a bit tedious, but everything to the left-hand side of that semicolon character is how positive numbers will be formatted. Everything to the right-hand side is how negative numbers will be formatted. You can add more things to the format string, but we're going to stick with the positive and negative just for now. The negative number has the exact same format as positive numbers, it's just contained in round brackets. To add a letter to the end of that string, we can just click after the point 00, so just before the semicolon, and to include text, you get a bit of a clue here, the $ contained in single quotes. If I type in a single quote, excuse me, and then the letter M, and then another single quote, I will add the letter M to the end of that format string. You can actually often get away without using the single quotes. It's just that sometimes the text you're typing in already has a meaning to a format code. So for safety, it's worthwhile indicating you wanted that to be a literal string. It shouldn't be possible for us to have any negative box office values, but just in case I want to add in the same format code or the same number to the same letter, I should say, to the end of the negative number format. So the letter M in some single quotes. And then while I'm here, I'm going to highlight and then copy by pressing Ctrl and C, copy all that text to the clipboard. If I now click OK, I can head back to my Money Made column. I'm going to right click on it and choose Field Properties. Head back to the FX button and launch the expression builder. And then I'm going to take away the word currency from the name of the function. So it's just the format function. And again, you can see that in the text category, the generic format function is sitting there. 2 parameters to fill in, the thing you're trying to format, followed by the format string. So where I have the digit 0 there, I'm going to delete that, open some double quotes, press Ctrl and V to paste in what I've just copied, and then close the double quotes to contain the entire format string. So that's what the final format function should look like. If I then zoom out and click OK a couple of times, have a look at the results, I'll finally have a phrase that's a little easier for me and other users to read. You can use the format function in SQL as well, so if we wanted to, we could right-click the films dataset and choose Dataset Properties, and then add a new column above our From clause, starting with a comma, and then film.title, plus the word made, again in single quotes this time in SQL, plus, and then I can refer to the format function, open some round brackets, and then state film.boxofficedollars. I can then type in a comma, and in a set of single quotes, enter the format string. So I'll type in a $, followed by a hash, comma 0, 2 commas to scale to millions, 0.00 to get 2 decimal places, and then just the letter M. I'll just quickly zoom in. The one difference here, because of course the entire string needs to be contained in single quotes in SQL, you don't wrap the letters and currency symbols in single quotes. If I carry on typing a semicolon and then in some round brackets, and I'll just zoom out so it doesn't jump around on the screen. I can do the same format, so it will be a $sign and then a hash, comma, 0, comma, 0.00m, close the round brackets, close the single quotes, close the round brackets for the format function, and then I can add on the phrase at the box office. I'll close the single quotes and provide an alias for that as money made to. And then if I click OK, and then change the field used in the money made column from money made to money made to, run the report, and I'll end up with the exact same results, just with the formatting done in SQL rather than in Visual Basic. This is one example where the drag and drop method might be the best choice, particularly if you don't need the full calculated field. So I'm going to get rid of the money made to value from that text box, and I'm going to replace it with the title column. So I'm just going to drag title into that text box, again making sure that I've got my flashing text cursor displayed. Then I'm going to type in a space followed by the word made, and then I can drag the box office dollars field, and then at the end of that, at the box office. Okay, so at this point, of course, the box office dollars won't be formatted, and I can clearly see that's the case. But I don't have to do anything complicated about formatting this. I don't need to write a format function. Back in the design view, if I click on the box office dollars placeholder, I can simply then right-click on it and choose to view its placeholder properties. Now I want to do this because I don't want to apply the currency formatting to the entire text box. If I right click that and use text box properties, I can't apply currency formatting to the name of the film and the word made and just box office dollars, but I can apply it just to the individual box office dollars placeholder in that string. So if I select it and then right click on it and choose placeholder properties, there's a number page on the left-hand side of that dialog box and a currency page, and I'm going to use 2 decimal places with a 1000 separator showing the values in millions with English United States dollars. There it is. And then on the custom page, I'm going to add in the letter M at the end of the 2 decimal places. And if I click OK and then run the report again, I'll see that I get the exact same end results, just an awful lot easier than concatenating the entire thing. For the last example, I'd like to look at how to concatenate some special characters into your strings. So we'll construct a column which contains a combination of literal text, some values of some fields, and special characters such as tab spaces and new line characters. Let's start by adding a new column to the dataset. I'll right-click Films and choose Add Calculated Field, and then I'll call this column Details, and then hit the FX button to begin building my expression. I'll start by including the literal word title, and then I'd like to concatenate that with the value of the title field, but in between the two, I'd like to insert a tab character. Now, it's difficult for me to physically type in a tab character as a literal string. I can't include tab in some double quotes. So what I can do, there's a couple of options actually in Visual Basic, but one option is to know the character code for a tab space and use a function to generate that. So the function I'm going to use, if I type in an ampersand and then go to my common functions category and the text category, there's a function called CHR, which allows you to type in the number of an ASCII character code and for it to generate that actual character. If you're not sure what the ASCII character codes are, then I can point you to this Wikipedia article about ASCII, and on this page there's a control code chart, and you can see it's the decimal column that you're interested in. Number 9 is the character code for a horizontal tab character. There are other characters you can generate as well, so you can generate standard English language characters, various punctuation characters and the numbers and uppercase letters and lowercase letters, etc. But as you can type those in on the keyboard anyway, it's less likely that you'll be using those, and far more likely you'll be inserting characters from the control character chart, control code chart. So horizontal tab is the one we're going to go for this first example. So to make that work with the CHR function, I can insert that, type in the number 9, close the round brackets, and then I can concatenate the value of the title field. So I can go to the fields list, double click title, and then if I click OK and OK again, I'll add my details column to the table and then get rid of the box office and money made columns, have a quick look at the results. And it's not immediately obvious, it's not easy to see this, but I can see that every film title has the word title preceding it, and there is what is actually a tab space rather than just a space character in between. That's not the only way to insert a tab in Visual Basic. Some of the control characters are so commonly used that Microsoft generated constant keywords you can use to reference them more easily than remembering their code numbers. So for a tab character, if I go back to the details view, the details column, right click on it and choose Field Properties, I can click the FX button at the right hand side, and I could replace CHR9 with a reference to the VB, short for Visual Basic of course, tab. So that references a constant which returns the correct character code for a tab space. So there's no difference if I click OK a couple of times and run the report. I get the exact same results. It's just slightly easier to remember VB tab than it is to remember CHR9, I suppose. We can use the same approach to insert new line characters as well. So after the line which tells me the title of the film, I'd like a new line which says release date, followed by the release date of the film. So let's right click on the details and choose Field Properties. And then if I hit the FX button, what I want to do after the value of the title field, I'd like to concatenate a new line. Now, the way this is done depends on exactly which system you're working in, but in Windows systems, the new line character is actually a combination of two. It's a carriage return and a line feed. And again, if I look back at the ASCII chart, the carriage return is character number 13, CR, carriage return, and then number 11, number 10 is the line feed. Excuse me. So I can concatenate two characters. So if I wanted to do that using the CHR function, that would be CHR13 concatenated with CHR10. But again, that's a little awkward to remember and a little awkward to type in as well. I've got to reference that function twice. It does work, of course, if I just concatenate the phrase release date to the end of that, just to prove that it does actually work. If I hit OK a couple of times and then run the report, this technique does work. I get a new line character, but there's an easier way. Back in the design view, I can right click my details column again and choose Field Properties, hit the FX button, and then rather than those two references to the CHR function, I can refer to a Visual Basic constant. So VB CR LF. I guess you pronounce it Verbakurlf or something like that. So VBCRLF, Visual Basic Carriage Return Line Feed. If you hit OK a couple of times again and then run the report, exactly the same end result. VBCRLF isn't the only constant you might encounter to do this. If I go back to the Field Properties of Details, you may see people using VB New Line, which is a slightly older constant. This is apparently obsolete in modern versions of the Visual Basic language. It still works in Report Builder, by the way, but it's considered obsolete, so it might be worthwhile avoiding VB New Line, despite how tempting it is to use because it's much easier to remember, I think, than VBCRLF. The modern equivalent of VB New Line, apparently, is, if I go back to the function again, or the expression again, is a slightly more elaborate phrase. I've got to refer to the system namespace followed by environment, and then within there, new line. So it's a lot more awkward to type in system.environment.newline. If I hit OK a couple of times and then run the report, so same end result, I get a new line character entered. Back to the design view, I'm just going to replace that again. I'm going to go back to VBCRLF, which is where we kind of started with this, with constants, VBCRLF. And then I'm actually going to bring the release date down to a separate line just to make it slightly easier for me to read the expression. I'd like then to include another VB tab character and then concatenate that with a formatted version of the release date. So I'm going to use the format function again. We haven't done this for working with dates and times yet, so I'm going to use the format function and then reference the release date column, followed by a comma, and then in some double quotes I can type in my date format string. So I'll type in, let's go for 4 lowercase d's, that will give me the full name of the day of the week, and then a space followed by a single lowercase d, that will give me the number of the day of the month, and another space, 4 uppercase m's, which will give me the full month name, and another space, and then 4 lowercase y's for the year. I can close the double quotes and close the round brackets, hit OK a couple of times, run the report, and then you can see that these values are gradually getting built up. And we could continue in that vein until we've constructed a single field which includes all of the details for the film. It depends on how far you want to go with this and how bored you might get. But from this point on, everything is very much the same. I can add in more carriage returns, if I use the correct concatenation symbol at least. And then I can concatenate even more things. So let's go for one more. Let's go for what haven't we used yet? We haven't used the Oscar wins. Let's go for Oscar wins. So I'll type in a descriptor for that, Oscar wins, and a VB tab, and then the value of the Oscar wins field. So having done all that, if I click OK one more time and then hit run, there we go, the end result. So quite a lot of things you can do with concatenation in Report Builder, not just as simple as just adding 2 bits of text together. You can also add numbers and dates and results of calculations and format those in a variety of ways. Hopefully you'll get some mileage out of some of those techniques, some more than others I suspect. But thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.